Last month, a small business owner got approved for a $55,000 Chase Ink Unlimited card with no docs. This money let them drop $16,000 on a bulk inventory order through Alibaba without stressing out about interest or killing their cash flow. And if you've ever had to choose between stocking up or paying your bills, you already know a $50,000+ credit line at 0% interest can literally save your business. So coming up, you're going to see the 4 key reasons they still got approved for their Chase Ink card, even with a 680 credit score, and 2 baddies that usually trigger instant denials, how they scored a $14,000 credit limit increase in under 30 seconds, and 5 simple things they could have done differently that would have likely turned their $55,000 approval into $75K in just half the time. Oh, and by the way, I put together a no PG business card master list with 25+ cards and counting on it. And with these cards, you never have to worry about high credit usage, tanking your personal credit score. That's because it never even shows up on your personal credit report. So there's no hard credit pulls, your score stays untouched, no personal guarantee, so you're not personally responsible for the debt. And here's the big one, if your business ever struggles and you have to shut it down for some reason, you can walk away personally debt-free. So if you want instant access to the No PG Business Card Master List, just hit the link below. Now, let's rewind to the beginning for a second. It was almost exactly 1 year into running their business. Revenue was strong at $500,000 and personal income hit $100,000. But the personal credit file wasn't spotless. Their FICO scores were in the 680 to 695 range, and there were 2 old 30-day late payments still lingering on the report. Now, that's not terrible, but in today's climate, even a couple dings can make a lender nervous. But still, they took a bold step. Instead of applying for a card online like most people do, they walked into a Chase branch and opened a business checking and savings account in person. And nothing huge, just a $2,000 in checking and $500 they deposited in the savings. No intentions to use the accounts heavily, just enough to keep keep their fee free. Right then and there, during that same visit, they applied for the Chase Ink Unlimited Business Credit Card. Now, the business had just turned 1, and that mattered. Many underwriters treat that 1 to 2 year mark as the first real sign of staying power. And you know what? It actually worked. They were instantly approved for $16,000. No docs required, no personal Chase relationship needed. Just a clean enough profile, strong business numbers, and a face-to-face presence. Now, over the next few weeks, they used the card exactly how it was meant to be used. They made a large $16K inventory purchase, then paid it down to $500 within 30 days. After that, they kept the balance between $500 to $1,700. And they were paying the minimums only, around $40 a month throughout the 0% intro period. Then, like clockwork, they paid it all off in full before the interest kicked in. Not a single dollar was paid in interest. Oh, and during this process, Chase rewarded this behavior with a $3,000 auto credit limit increase, bumping them up to $19,000 by month 6. Now, fast forward a year, the intro APR on the first card had just ended, and this business owner was ready to gear up for another round of inventory spending, this time even bigger. So they scheduled another in-person appointment at the Chase branch, again with the same banker. But this detail matters because now they weren't just walking in, they were a relationship now. So during the meeting, they laid it out. They needed a second 0% APR card with cash back to help offset the 3% processing fee Alibaba charges on credit card purchases. Now, here's what exactly changed since the first application. Their FICO score had skyrocketed to 795. That's a 115-point increase from the year before. Their personal income had doubled to $200,000. That's up from $100K in just 12 months. And their first card was paid off and still open with a $19K limit. Plus, they had a track record of using credit lightly. So the person said, I'm looking for a $25,000 limit at least. And they had it over nothing but their ID and their existing Chase card. And you know what Chase responded with? $36,000, instantly approved, no docs, no pushback. Now, here's where things really get interesting. Just 2 days after that approval, they read something on a credit form that sounded almost too good to be true. They found out that you can move limits between Chase business cards, and the 0% interest will still apply to the new total. So they were skeptical but curious. They called their Chase business banker to ask. And the banker confirmed, yes, it's real. And yes, it's that easy. And yes, the 0% interest still applies after the move. The only issue is that you usually need to leave $2,000 to $3,000 on the card that you're transferring from. So they call the number on the back of the card and ask to move $14,000 from their first Ink Unlimited, which had a $19,000 limit on it, to their new Ink card with the $36K limit. And the rep responded with, "No problem, just hang tight for me." And 30 seconds later, and they said, "You're all set. Your new card limit now has a $50,000 limit on it. The old card now has a $5,500 limit." And yes, the entire $50K limit kept the 12-month intro APR of 0%. So there was no credit check, no paperwork, just a simple phone call and a power move that most people have no idea exists. And that $750 welcome bonus on the new card, that's still active. All they had to do was spend $6,000 in the first 3 months, which they were going to do anyway. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. This was a smart and successful play. Turning below average personal credit into a $50,000 Chase business credit card is no small feat. But if we're being real, there were some missed opportunities here that could have taken this from impressive to elite. And more importantly, there are a few things that you should watch out for if you're trying to follow a similar path. And first is actually using the business bank accounts. Opening a Chase business checking and savings account was a strong first step, but then there was just crickets. There was $2,000 in their checking and $500 in their savings just sitting there to avoid fees. But there's no transactions, no deposits, really just no movement. And here's the thing. Banks love when you act like a real business. Even just funneling $500 a month through the account, invoice payments, Stripe deposits, transfers from your processor, that all shows Chase that you're legit. When they see activity, they trust you more, and trust equals higher limits. So let's talk about that second card approval for $36K. There were no docs required, and that's a win, no doubt. But here's where it could have been a bigger win. They told the banker, "I want at least $25K. That's a minimum ask, not a confident target. And the banker might have keyed in a higher request, but we'll never know. And this was someone with $500K in business revenue yearly and a 790 FICO score at that time. If they had said, "I'm shooting for $50,000, they might have gotten it on the spot. You have to remember, credit limits aren't just based on what you qualify for. They're also influenced by what you ask for. So don't be timid, be bold. Another thing they could have done just to go above and beyond is bring in proof of income and revenue. Even though Chase didn't ask for documentation, bringing it to the table anyway, things like your profit and loss statement, 3 months of business bank statements for your primary account, and recent tax returns could have been a game changer. When you're really asking for a big limit, you need to make your banker's job easy. That means handing them a clean, professional funding file that says, "I'm prepared, I know what I'm doing, and I can handle more credit." One recent business owner got approved for $1.3 million in business funding within a few months, and they swear by this strategy. So he built the habit of always submitting a full funding file up front, and we're talking about a dozen or more documents that bankers love to see. And it included things like that P&L, that profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, 6 months of business bank statements, tax returns for probably 2 years or so, business licenses, a copy of his driver's license, avoided business check so they know where to send the money to if it's like a term loan or a business line of credit, a business plan or a use of funds breakdown, their articles of organization, EIN confirmation from the IRS, and even screenshots of his merchant account showing monthly sales. And for him, it worked again and again and again. So you want to give your banker ammunition and they can go out and fight for you on the inside. Also, this person shouldn't have waited until after their 0% interest ended. I really think this is a strategic miss that a lot of people overlook. They actually waited until that full 12-month intro period ended before applying for a second Ink card. But Chase doesn't require you to finish one promo before starting another. In fact, they could have applied, 3 to 6 months into that first card and stacked a second card with overlapping 0% interest and had 2 full credit lines available at once, giving them more breathing room for inventory, marketing, or cash flow. Here's one of the biggest caution flags, and it's something I want every person watching to take seriously. This person got approved with a personal credit scores between 680 and 695 and 2 30-day late still on the report. That's not terrible, but it's also not the profile most banks are looking for in this current climate. They were a little bit lucky and they had other things working in their favor, like in-person banking relationships and strong revenue and personal income. But for the average person applying cold, that credit profile could have easily led to a denial. Many lenders are tightening up, and even a few baddies can kill your shot, especially if you're not submitting documentation. If you don't have at least a 700 score with no recent negatives, you'll want to wait. Fix your credit, clean up your report, and come back stronger. Now, I want to show you the combo of data points and smart moves that likely overpowered their so-so credit profile and got them approved with those 2 Chase Inc. cards. First, they had strong business revenue. So when they sat down with the Chase banker, one thing immediately stood out: that $500,000 a year in business revenue. Not once, but consistently across both years. Now think about it from a lender's perspective. You got someone with $500,000 in sales applying for a credit card, and even if their personal credit isn't squeaky clean, that kind of income signals that they can handle a 5-figure credit line. Then too, they had high personal income, and it doubled year over year. In year 1, they reported $100K in personal income. Then in year 2, it was $200K. And it shows Chase that this person isn't just surviving in business, they're thriving. When banks evaluate risk, income is one of the key things they use to determine how likely you are to default. The higher your personal income, the more flexible you appear, and even if your credit history isn't perfect. So strong income tells the bank, even if things go sideways, I have the means to pay you back. Then they built an in-person relationship with Chase. This one is still underrated, especially in the digital age that we're in. They didn't apply online. They walked into a bank branch, and they did it twice. The first time they opened a business checking and a savings account. The second time, a year later, they met with the same banker to apply for their second business card. So the banker wasn't just entering numbers into a system, they were acting as a human filter, someone who could advocate for them, highlight the good, and help smooth over the not so great things. So in-person relationships can override borderline credit. If a banker sees you as a real responsible business owner, they can kind of grease the wheels in ways online apps just can't. Then they open a business checking and savings account first. So before asking for anything, they laid the foundation. They opened that business checking and then savings, and then they deposited $2,000 into the checking and $500 into savings. So banks reward familiarity. You don't have to go all in, but opening a business account shows intent to build trust. So even if you're not running, big revenue through the account, just having it puts you in a better category than the person applying cold online. And they also use their 0% interest period like a pro. This wasn't just a use it and then forget about it type of credit move. Once approved for that $16K on their first Chase Inc. card, they used it strategically. They made one major inventory purchase and then maxed out the card on purpose. And then they made a power play by paying it down from $16K to just $500 within 30 days. Banks just love it when you use their money the way that it's intended, to grow your business without putting them at risk. This behavior really checked off all the boxes, full utilization, quick, large paydowns, and regular activity, and no missed payments. And they also applied again after key data points improved dramatically. This is where it all came together. A full year after their first card, they walked back into Chase to apply for their second. But this time, they came back stronger. Their FICO score had jumped from the 680s to 795. Their income had doubled from 100K to 200K. The first Chase card was at a $0 balance with, clean usage history and a higher limit. So they got approved for a 36K card. So what really happened here is that they waited until their numbers told a better story. They came in person, confident and specific about their needs, and they had receipts, a full year of solid behavior that made saying yes just easy. This is really a good example of how to build up trust with a bank, and most importantly, it's something that you can model. But speaking of modeling other people's success, did you know it's actually possible to get $200,000 in business funding in just 30 days? That's exactly what one business owner did just a few months ago. So you got to check out this next video here to see more than 10 banks that you can tap for business funding and some rare data points that banks love to see that most people never share publicly. Thank you for watching.